Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Racket Gripping ASMR with Eric, the racket scientist. And so let's go ahead and get started. But before that, I just want to talk a little bit about what I got here. By now, this is my third video. And so I just want to say that if you're watching these and you're probably thinking to yourself, man, this shit's boring. I do apologize for that, but most of the stuff that I do in my spare time with rackets is really not that interesting. A lot of it is boring, and I want you to know that these videos that I've been filming, it never was really intended to be my primary content. I think these videos are mainly meant to be kind of an introduction of me getting used to filming these things, just so that when I do start doing my primary content, I feel more comfortable and adjusted and have my equipment in order. So these are really meant to just be like a kind of an experiment to fill the time and just get into the cadence and give you some behind the scenes view of things that I do. So we all like a little behind the scenes action, because we all like the sausage, but some of us are curious about how the sausage is made. Some of us like sausage a little more than others, and that's all I'm going to say about that. So what do we have here today is we have a Redson racket. Now, for those of you watching, not all of you are going to have heard of Redson, the brand. So I'm going to tell you about it right now. Redson is a Taiwanese manufactured Japanese design brand. So according to their website, Redson rackets are designed in Japan, and as far as I can tell, all of the manufacturing is done in Taiwan. And as we can see, this racket says made in Taiwan. Just like some of my favorite people. And why haven't we heard of Redson? Well, Redson is a much smaller volume racket company than the ones that we know. And that could be for a number of reasons. One is that Redson doesn't make other products. It doesn't have as wide of a scope like Li-Ning and Yonex do. As far to my knowledge, they only make rackets and a little bit of apparel, stuff like that. They also keep their market much more narrow. From what I have heard, they don't sell too much outside of Asia, and then even within Asia, Taiwan is their primary market. From what I've seen and heard, even though they are designed in Japan, Redson rackets actually aren't really that common in Japan either. Well, that's just what I've heard, and from what I've seen, I haven't been able to find any, and I'm sure that they are out there. But primarily Taiwan, and if you're looking at some overseas merchants, E78 shop in Hong Kong is a popular one. They sell these rackets as well. You go take a look at those. So why do I have Redson rackets? Now, the one that I have for you today is an interesting one, and it's actually one racket that I would consider one of my mains. Now, badminton is not a smash game, but yes, when you have several rackets, you do have a priority or kind of a choice of which racket you choose for certain situations. And a lot of people ask me, Eric, what is your favorite racket? And that's kind of like asking a weeb what his favorite anime is. A well-intentioned question with an extremely complicated, long-winded, and never-ending answer. And that's very relatable for me because I like anime too. I like a little bit of anime, a little bit of the swords, and little bit of hentai. But anyways, so the answer to why I like these rackets, and what I mean when I say that I mean it, is that the Redson rackets in my collection are some of the rackets which I can always feel comfortable playing with, right? So, this might be a foreign concept to some of you who just have one or two rackets and you just play with that always. But, not every racket I own feels natural to me, right? Some of the rackets I have to adjust my style, and that doesn't necessarily make it bad for me, right? A lot of my rackets I still like for one reason or another, but these rackets, specifically this one too, is one of my main rackets, are rackets that I always feel confident playing with, and my highest tier of comfort rackets are ones that I will use in tournament. And this is one of those rackets. This is a racket that just came out. It's Redson's newest high-end model. It's called the Redson RG08 CQ. Okay, I'm gonna say that again in case you missed it. Okay, Redson RG08 CQ. And when I say 08, I mean 08, not because there's actual letters in the name. Anyways, you can say what you want about this naming convention, but we've had weirder ones in the past. Looking at you, last generation leaning rackets. So what does the RG stand for? Well, the RG stands for rigidity. Yeah, really creative stuff there. 08, I don't know. CQ is supposed to stand for, well, the C is supposed to stand for comfort. I don't remember what the Q is supposed to stand for, if anything. Now, the reason for the CQ is because there's another variation of this racket, which I left upstairs. So one second. Yeah. As you can see, I have a couple more of these rackets here. And as I was saying, the new one that I have for you today is a CQ model. The other variant is, oh, that's also my CQ, is my AQ. This is the AQ. And the differences are very subtle, but you can kind of see them in the highlighting colors. On the frame, the AQ has blue there and red here, while the CQ has orange there and blue here. So yeah, that very confusing because they share a color, but in general, the red one's gonna mean A. And the A stands for aggressive, by the way, which is, very testosterone fueled naming. Yeah, so that one is for all you dudes out there who drive lifted trucks and try to fight inanimate objects after leaving the bar drunk. Anyways, so we're going to talk about that a little later, what the difference is, but let's go over, first of all, what is interesting or special about Redson rackets and this racket in particular. So I'm not going to go over all of the racket models today, but Redson, once you start becoming familiar with Redson racket models, you'll start to see that they have some very interesting technologies in their rackets that you don't see anywhere else. You could say that for any racket company, really, but they have some really weird stuff. This racket in particular, the RG, the rigidity, is supposed to be referring to this, oh shit, it's a hexagonal frame. Okay, I almost said octagon, but I'm not very good at counting, so I can't really tell the difference. But hexagonal shape. Oh wait, no, it is octagon. Oh, fuck me. Okay. Octagonal shape. So basically it's, it kind of looks like it could be a sword frame, right? But it's got a bit of a flat edge. So it's like a kind of like a truncated sword frame. I'm just going to kind of rotate this in front of the camera and hope that you can see what I'm talking about. It's a little bit sharp, but it's still got a bit of a flat edge to it. So you're just gonna have to believe me on that one. So if you've had a good eye, you can already start to spot one of the oddities about the racket, which is that you can see there's multiple parts of the frame that are thinner and thicker. Okay. And you might be wondering, why did they do that? So with some rackets, such as the famous Voltric Z-Force 2 from Yonex, a lot of you will know that that racket featured something like this, where some parts of the frame, notably in the 3 and the 9 o'clock section, that was thinner, which kind of helped the head of the racket wrap around the shuttle on contact. Some of you may know that the Arc 11 Pro has a similar sort of quirk, but achieves it in a different way with the frame recess. And fewer, but maybe some of you will also know that the Leaning Tectonic 9 has something similar as well, although the narrower parts are over here, which I guess would be the 4 o'clock and the 8 o'clock parts of the frame. Now this one's kind of weird because it's got several different sections. Let's count starting from the top. This is a thick section. Here, this 1 inch is a thin section. We got another thick section here and a thin section. So you can see that there's a lot of variance here in the frame. Why they did that, I have no idea. And oh, we can also confirm that this is octagon shaped because it says Octopower, as if this thing is going to sprout tentacles like an octopus. And if you've seen enough anime, you know where that's going. Anyways, if you have a really, really good eye, or if you know what this is, then you will know the other quirk that I'm going to point out, which is that the top of the frame and the sides of the frame, that is all of the strings that have single pass grommets, or are supposed to have single pass grommets, basically strings that aren't in shared grommet holes. Yeah, the frame does not have grommets. Here, you can see that right there. Look at it. There's no grommets. The string's just raw dogging this frame. So that's a little interesting. Now, why not? Right? Like, you know, you'd think that it would probably damage the frame, and you would be right. And for that reason, Redson rackets tend to have a lower stringing rating in terms of weight than other rackets. This one's rated for 26 pounds max, which is a pretty low ceiling by today's standards. I know some of the older Yonex rackets were also limited to 26 or 28. But nowadays, I think they typically go 28 plus. So, and the reason is because, yeah, the strings will dig into the frame and will damage it over time. But the reason they do this is to have a much more direct contact feeling when you strike the shuttle. So it really is kind of raw dogging the shuttle in a literal sense. And I've kind of fallen in love with that feeling because, you know, once you raw dog something, you never really go back. But in all jokes aside, you do get a much more direct contact feeling with the shuttle using this racket. And that's part of what makes it so great. I think it's good both for playing competitively because you get a really good feel for the conditions and how the shuttle is flying. But I also think that these rackets are really good for learning and training because the more you can feel the shuttle on contact, the better feedback you get through your body in order to adjust your technique. And I say these rackets because these two that I just showed you are not the only models that Redson makes with the grommetless design. In fact, they have, trying to count, I think they have 2 other models that share this grommetless design, and I also have those as well, which one day I guess I will introduce to you. So let's take a look at this brochure here. What is this? Rise Up. I don't think I've ever taken a close look at this. So today's video is generally going to be a little shorter, and you're going to see why, because there's no factory grip here. So half of my work, actually most of my work, I don't even need to do, which is why I've been jabbering about random crap. So, well, you can look over this if you can read Japanese. I can't read shit, so I'm not really gonna go over this. For you, 82 grams. Now, one interesting thing to note is that, well, first of all, let's rise up together, right? Whoever came up with this was probably a big fan of Hamilton. Rise up, everybody, right? Okay. Maybe you don't know that. So the interesting thing about rackets that come without a stock grip is that sometimes, not always, but I find most of the time, the weight class that is listed, so this is a 4U, meaning that it's in its raw form, it's going to be 80 to 84 grams, right? And that's exactly it. It's in this form without the undergrip, it's going to be between 80 and 84 grams. Okay. Now, when you get other rackets that do have an undergrip, it's going to come like that, and that's going to be in 80 to 84 grams. So you see the difference here is that this, even though there is no undergrip, will be in the same weight range. Whereas if you did have an undergrip, it would be between 80 and 84 grams. Then you would remove the undergrip, making it lighter. So for example, if the undergrip were 2 grams, the weight range would go from 80 to 84 to 78 to 82 grams. And then you add some of that weight back when you grip it. But this one, we're only adding weight. So if we're adding another 2 grams when gripping it, then it's going to go from 80 to 84 to 82 to 86. Okay. So all that just to say, when you find rackets like this that don't come with an undergrip and it's saying, okay, 4U or 3U, you want to double check if that's the weight as is, like in this form, is it a 4U racket? Because once you grip it, and if you're the person who always takes off the undergrip, you're going to find that this might be a little heavier than you expect, right? Because when I grip this, it's going to sit between a 4U and 3U model in terms of weight. Now, for some rackets, that might be an issue, but this one is actually pretty head light. It is, I measure it at slight head light. I don't remember what and I do remember the balance. I fully gripped and strung these measuring at 287, which is, yes, slightly head light. So it being a little heavier than 4U isn't really an issue for me. And yeah, so, but the other thing is that I really like these shrink wrap grips. And the reason is very obvious. It's really easy to work with. All you got to do is grip it. So I'm going to show you right now. In fact, you could even argue that this is better than electrical tape. Because if you're wrapping something with electrical tape, here, get a load of this shit. Oh, yeah. Feels good, doesn't it? If you're wrapping it with electrical tape, every time you do it, you could be off by fractions of a gram, it's really kind of inconsequential. But when you get the grip like this, you kind of know from the factory that it's just going to be clean. You don't have to mess with it at all. Beautiful. And you know, if I had a good way of applying shrink wrap to grips, I think I would have done that. I actually came up with the idea a while back, and I bought some shrink tubing off Amazon that would have been big enough, but I never ended up giving it a try, which maybe I should, and see how that turns out after I finish sticking other things in that tube. So now we get to start directly with the shrink wrap. Did I just say shrink wrap? I meant oh my god, I'm having a stroke. No, the foam, the cushion wrap. There's already shrink wrap on this stuff. All right. 2 layers, up and down, up. And down. Oh, man, okay. Bueno. Also, the grip with the shrink wrap just feels very nice, right? Like it's so smooth. Like if I had to, if someone told me to just, that I had to lick a grip, like a bare grip, I would lick that one. Just because it's so clean and smooth. I mean, I would do it even if no one told me to do that. I just like it that much. What I do in my own time is none of your business. I mean, you're the one watching me grip rackets. So just, you know, just shut up and enjoy it. Okay, got it. All right. Sorry about bringing this off camera for a bit. This needs to be, I need to get this. This part is easier when it's like close to my face, which is what she said. I mean, you can't see it, but like when I do things in the camera, it's like kind of awkward because I'm stretching my arms out like this. So sometimes I do need to bring it in, so to speak. So now might be a good time to talk about the differences between the CQ and the AQ, right? So you might be wondering, okay, what is the difference there? So the most famous pair, or I guess you could call them sister rackets, the Yonex 88S and D, actually have a lot of differences, right? So there's the overall length, there's the head size, there's the, I mean, everything about the basic proportions. So like the shaft length, the grip length, the head length, head size, the frame profile is kind of the same, like the cross section. What else is similar? You know, they don't even have, I think, the same, like, they don't even have the same weight distribution. So the 88D is supposedly more tip heavy, just like a certain thing in my pants. whereas the 88S is designed in a different way. It's like the 88D is designed to be a little bit more, I think, for smashing or whatever. The 88S has a head design that is more rewarding for drives and stuff. I won't go into detail because this video isn't about that. But normally between like a pair of rackets or like a couple rackets of the same or different variations of the same racket, like Mizuno Acro Speed, there's 3 of those now. They all have different balance points, right? So there's like some variation. So you would expect that between CQ and AQ, especially since one is called comfort literally, and then the other one is called like aggressive, you would think that there's gonna be some difference, like flex or like, I don't know, like a length or whatever, or weight. And you'd be surprised to find out that actually they measure exactly the same. The marketing, according to the marketing materials, they have the exact same flex. They have the exact same basic dimensions and everything like that. It took me actually quite a while to figure out what the difference was. Okay, let's put them all on the table here. So it looks like I got it pretty good. I think my first CQ, I had a little length extra here. You can kind of see there's like 2 layers up here when I ended it, where here there's only one. Very minute, but a difference nonetheless that might bother me. So difference, yeah. You might think there's a different balance or different flex. Nope, both the same. Even playing with them, I couldn't really tell for a while until I looked really closely, and I found that the difference is in the head shape, and it's not even that apparent. It's very, very subtle. Like, I had to stare at this for a significant amount of time before I made this discovery. And even looking at them on top of each other, it's very difficult for me to tell. And to be honest, I don't even think it's gonna show up on camera. But the difference is that the CQ, and the thing is, the top of the head is identical too. It isn't, the only difference is here in the bottom half of the frame. The CQ just has a little bit more of a rounded edge, making it slightly more egg shape and having a little bit of more forgiving sweet spot. So that's probably what the comfort means, is just that the sweet spot is a little larger and a little more comfortable to hit. Very, very subtle. And then here is the A in my right hand, the aggressive. I'm going to put them side by side here. If you kind of squint, you can kind of see it a little bit, which is, okay, wait, hang on. If you kind of squint, you can see that this is more rounded out, and then this, there's a little less room here. It's super subtle. And like, I have to admit that if you don't know what you're looking for, you probably wouldn't even notice the difference when you're playing with them. I mean, I didn't at first. I would think things like string tension difference, difference in grip, difference in hitting conditions, all of those things would make more of a difference than that. So these 3 are my current racket of choice for men's doubles because they swing really fast, which I like. I don't really need the, I guess, stability kind of, or less important in men's doubles. In men's doubles, it's a little more important for me to be able to swing quickly for drives and cutoffs, especially when I'm playing front court primarily, which is what I prefer in men's doubles. But the other thing I didn't talk about is that even though these are head light, the shaft is like medium stiff, so it's quite easy to flex. You know, a little reminiscent of the NanoFlare 700, which, you know, I just did the gripping video of, and I will get that strung, and I'm excited to compare that side by side to see what that's like here. But what I was saying is that because the shaft is pretty easy to work with, you know, I don't ever find myself really lacking power. This is a very easy racket to do stick smashes with. They're very satisfying, and you get a really nice pop out of them, and you can get some really nice drives and stuff. You know, it feels a lot to me. It reminds me of the Brave Sword 12, but with better contact feeling and more refinement, just because this is a more modern design. And I really did like the Brave Sword 12 for doubles. Just that it lacked a little bit of backline power, which this does, in my opinion, make up for a little bit. But, you know, who knows? I can do side-by-side comparison of that too. Let's see, other things to mention. Yeah, so stringing these things, well, first of all, I've heard that stringing these rackets is a pain in the ass because these grommetless holes, because there's no grommet that runs all the way through, you actually have to thread this string through one side, and then you have to line it up so that it comes out the other side. Like it doesn't just, it can get caught in the middle of the frame. So you have to be really careful when lining it up, and you might have to try multiple times, which does sound really annoying. Thankfully, I'm not the one who has to do that. And if you're watching this, the guy who strings my rackets, you have my thanks, and this is why I pay you. And the other thing is that for some reason, and I think this has to do, again, with the grommetless technology, these rackets tend to drop tension, or I should say they string lower than other rackets at the same tension. What I mean is that if I strung one of this racket at 26 pounds and I strung a Yonex racket at 26 pounds, immediately when they come off the machine, this is going to be at least a half pound lower. So it's going to be 25.5. What I think is, I think it's due to the way the string is getting pulled through the holes in the racket. It could be that there's less friction because there's no grommets, and thus, you know, you get some tension slip while you're stringing. Or it could be that the machine just has an easier time to drop through, and it thinks that the tension is higher, and then it ends up being objectively lower. I don't really know why, but for that reason, I tend to string these rackets, or I tend to request these rackets 1 pound higher. So if I strung the NanoFlare 700 Pro at 26 pounds, then I'm going to string this at 27. And because of the grommetless design, very direct feeling, these rackets do feel really good at higher tension. So I've tried them at 28 pounds, feels amazing. But we are still, you know, a little nervous about damaging the frame, so I don't string them that high. And you know what, that's okay. Unless I get sponsored, you know, I would love to, but considering the things that I've said in this video, I highly doubt that they will. So we're just gonna have to live with that. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.